Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Keegan, and welcome back to the channel, and welcome back to the 2020 edition of the Supercoach Diaries, the pre-season. So, if you have Supercoach Gold or anything or something like that, I'm pretty sure there's a trial period perhaps for not everyone. For me though, I am subscribed to Supercoach Gold, which has meant I'm allowed to pick my 2020 team as a sort of a starter, as a way to sort of start theorising and putting together teams that I think might be a good way to start the new season. Before we get underway, just a couple of notes. As you probably realised, last year I got about half through the season and dropped completely off the face of the planet, and that is because pretty much real life got in the way. Got busy, really busy with work, which meant that I couldn't come home and devote time to editing and recording and all that stuff. You got a family. I've got a family, so I've got to do that sort of stuff first. But this year with work, I've started to get on top of work a bit more, which meant I've got a bit more free time. Meaning I'm definitely going to be putting my best foot forward and definitely going to be trying to keep up with the Supercoach Diaries. But just because I wasn't recording the diaries doesn't mean I actually didn't play Supercoach. I did play Supercoach right through to the end of the season, and as you can see here, this is what my team's looking like. This is how I ended up actually finishing off last season. A pretty good year, 6,089. I was in the top 5,000, which was, if you've been on this road with me from the start, I think the first season I did recording on YouTube, I was at about 20,000, which wasn't great. But now I've actually come all the way into 6,000 this most recent season, which is great. Again, the last round 23 did cost me. I did drop away a fair bit, but that's not the issue here. The issue here is, or not even the issue. The thing I'm happy about is I had a really, really good year. So this year, my goal is to finish in that top 5,000, in lower if possible. If I could get top 3,000, that would be A plus, amazing effort. Top 5,000, I'd be pretty happy with, but that is my goal this season, is my top 5,000. Now, before I show you my team that I'm going into with, or I've been messing around with this pre-season, I'll actually just quickly show you my team I finished last season with for those people that are interested. So here is what my screen's looking like at the moment. As you can see up here, the 2020 picker, which is great. But if you want to have a quick look about how my team finished last year, it was pretty good. I had a few good players, like Ben Cunnington and Brad Crouch, sort of let me down at the end there. But yeah, that was my team. Overall, a decent year. I think my forward line was always one that I always struggled to get my head around. Relying on the likes of Billings, probably I shouldn't have at the end here. Averaged 93 for the season. So this year, note one, don't put Jack Billings in your team, because I've been burnt by him too many times, so we're not doing that again this year. If you look around the rest, Brad Crouch was probably also a silly pick. Just on an off topic. God, I wish he came to the Suns last year, but that's just the way it goes. So maybe picking him up in Supercoach last year was a bit silly as well. So that's my Supercoach team for those that were interested, that did follow me for the start of last season. That's how my team finished. That's how I ended up having a pretty good year. So let's go into what you guys are probably more interested in, and that's looking at my 2020 team and talking you through some of the picks that I've made. This is what the layout looks like at the moment. Now, I reckon they'll update the layout because this looks very similar to last year. But they've got all the new prices in. They've got all the new players in. All the draftees are in. The only ones that they might add later on are players that might be picked up as supplemental players before the season starts. I think there are about 5 or 6 teams that still have 1 or 2 spaces on their list that they can bring in players before the start of the season. So a few players might get added, but at the moment, this is what we're rolling with. And I'll just talk you through some of the big selections that you probably noticed. Hooley, Richmond, they're just too good. You can't avoid having them. He had a really cracking end to the season last year. And yeah, pretty much like that. I think he is the second most expensive. You can see on here, he's the second most expensive defender. That's fine. Lloyd, I've had Lloyd in the past and I've been unconvinced at times. I could easily, I probably don't have the money if I switch a couple of my rookies around, which, by the way, if you probably haven't guessed, rookies always will change. You sort of look at the preseason games to see who put rookies to put out. So don't take too much notice of the rookies. I've just picked a bunch of random ones that I think might be good. Come round one, they'll definitely have changed between now and then. But yeah, so Hooley might go to Lloyd. I don't know. I've got Williams, who had a really good year for me last year. He got injured halfway through, I think partway through the year. He only played, it tells you he played 19 games. So I'm going to stick with him. I had a pretty good year with him last year, and I'm probably going to stick it out again. GWS are going to score well. They always do. Their team is pretty legit, and even into this season, they still look really good. So hopefully he has another good year. You got Doherty there. He's 2 years now. He hasn't even played a game. Carlton, he's done his knee before the season starts, and Carlton have been missing out on one of their best players. This year he's cheap. He is a risk. He very easily could redo his knee again, but I think if he stays fit and if he makes it to round one, he's definitely someone that you want to consider in your team. He will score if he comes back fully fit. He will be, by the end of the season, if he plays the entire season, he'll be one of the premium defenders in the game. But there is that risk of his injury. But I think the reward far outweighs the risk on Doherty, for me anyway. And Doty's another one that's coming back from injury. So Alex Keith has left Adelaide and moved to the Bulldogs. He was taking Doty's spot. Doty now is going to be that third tall intercepting defender for Adelaide. And at 273, I think he might not end up being an absolutely top tier premium defender, but he'll make us enough money that we can upgrade into a top tier defender. I've also got Stephen Hill in the back line. He can also play forward. I've thought about swinging him forward and moving things around, but at the moment he's sitting there. He's had a lot of injury as well, but I think I'm pretty happy with Hill. If I was to go all the way down, we can have a quick look at. So he only played 3 games last year, and averaged 39 because of injury. So he's there. He's one that could potentially I not trust because his body is pretty cooked. But he's someone that I'm gonna stick with for the time being. He has to probably play a few preseason games for me to be 100% locked in on him. But at the moment, I think he's worth at least considering. Looking to the midfield, McRae picks himself. Had a cracking year last year. Let's flip over here. We can see some stats. So McRae had a pretty cracking year last year. He played every game. He averaged 123. He's the most expensive he's the most expensive player this year. He's the most expensive midfielder as well. Ruckman, I don't think outside of the Ruckman, I don't think there's a player that starts over 700,000. So McRae is an automatic pick for me. Fife's there. Again, it could be Lachie Neale as well. I've got enough money, as you can see. I've got 18,600 up here. So that could end up being Lachie Neale, but I'm happy with that at the moment. Cripps, if he can stay fit, he is an absolute gun. I think Carlton are going to get better this year, meaning he's probably going to get higher points, which is great. If you look further along, Clayton Oliver, Melbourne had a really poor year last year. So I think if Melbourne get back to where they think they should be, or where they should be, which is probably in and around finals, he'll have a better year, and I reckon he could be set to have a breakout year that could possibly, if he plays to his best, he could be up and around getting around 650,000 if he plays well. Amir is an interesting one. Probably someone that he might change, definitely, but just for consideration, I put him in. He had to almost carry that Hawthorn, him and Warpool had to carry that midfield, that Hawthorn midfield last year. He won't have to this year. Mitchell should be back. Whether Mitchell comes back fully fit is another thing, but I think Amira, if Mitchell comes back, Amira then automatically gets the second best defensive midfielder, or even the third best if they go to Warple, meaning Amira could get a bit more of the ball. But again, how much of the injuries curtailed his ability. As coming from the Suns, in his first 2 years, he looked like he would be an absolute star, but his knee problems have really sort of curtailed his abilities. He's never going to be that explosive player that he promised to be at the Suns, but he's still a good player. And if he's not getting the best or second best defensive midfielder, then I reckon Amira could be a chance to score big. But again, that's a really risky one. That's probably not one that I'm going to have come the season, but for consideration anyway. Raul, look, he'll play 22 games for the Suns if he gets a chance, and he'll play predominantly midfield as well because we do lack a little bit in that area. So I think that he's a pretty safe bet to make some money. He'll be the Sam Walsh this year. Pickett, he had a gun. He had an absolutely amazing first game in the grand final. And I would say that he's probably going to be starting round one for the Tigers. And I would almost say he's a lock for that team. So he's pretty much a lock for my team. Moving into the rucks, a lot of people I've seen already have got Grundy and Gawn locked in and put away. I've got Grundy definitely because I think he is a star. Now, I could go Gawn, but what I've done actually is I've actually gone to Nick Nat. If Nick Nat has recovered fully from his injuries, he is an absolute gun. The effect he has on games is huge, which rates pretty well in Supercoach. So I'm hoping that with that, he can shorten that gap between Gawn and himself. If he does, because I think Gawn's an extra 200 or 220 grand or something in money. Using that 220 grand, I've invested in a few different places around my team. For instance, the Clayton Oliver might not be Clayton Oliver in that scenario, or my forward line Jacob Dawson might have to be a lesser player. So with that money, I've sort of moved it around and trying to make my team a bit more competitive all round. Nat Nui should still step up pretty well. He should still be a good player. And yeah, pretty much that's my reasoning. Grundy picks himself. Could easily win the Brownlow this year. So we'll stick with that. Looking to the forward line, so we got Midfield. Only played 16 games, but if he stays fit, he is an absolute gun, 111, averages 111, which is great. Dustin Martin in the forward line is an absolute gift. In the midfield, I would question whether to pick him because he's against the likes of Cripps and Clayton Oliver and all that. But in the forward line, he's an absolute dead set lock. He's the Dangerfield from last year because remember, Dangerfield was in the forward line last year and pretty much everyone picked him and put him in their forward line. This year, that's Martin. Martin goes straight into my midfield. Goes straight into my forward line, without any questions asked. Dawson had a really good year for the Swans. I had Heaney last year and he was a bit of a letdown. He ended up averaging 94, which is probably not too bad for a forward line player, but I probably expected a little bit more from him, hoping he'd play a bit more midfield. Dawson played great coming off the halfback for the Swans. Because he can play forward or defender as well, he's a good rotation pick. I can move him around, so I've got Hill here who can move to the forward line as well. So I can start flipping people around to fill gaps or for trades and all that, which is handy. As you probably see, most of my forward line is pretty much dual position players. Devon Smith's another one that can go into the midfield. He's also a player that got hurt by injury, but back in fully fit, I think that he will be a good player and he definitely makes some money for us. Rankin is probably the one player out of everyone in this team that is a dead set lock from the start as a rookie, because from all reports he's fully fit from the Suns, 123,000. He will have an immediate effect, and watch him in round one against Port. I think he's going to have a big game. He'd have had a lot of frustration because he couldn't get in the park. He couldn't get on the park. He played some NEAFL games towards the end of the season. He probably played 2 or 3 NEAFL games and he looked just a class above. He probably didn't have the fitness behind him at the time, but those little things that he did, he just looked like an absolute class. If he gets a pre-season behind him and he's fit, watch out, because I reckon he will be a big player for the Suns. Now, whether the only question would be, he's probably going to play mostly in the forward line. Is he going to touch the ball enough to get you those decent scores? He might only touch it 10 or 11 times. Whether those 10 or 11 times going to be quality. If he kicks 3 or 4 goals with those 10 or 11 touches, amazing, that's what you want. But if it's not as effective, then maybe he might not reach those heights you want. But as a rookie, I think he's pretty much a lock on. He'll make you some money regardless of how well he plays. Even if he plays averagely, he'll still make you some money. I still think he's worth putting into your forward line. Well, guys, that's my team. Again, as I said, don't worry about the rookies. They'll change as we go along. Let me know if you think I'm on the right track. You let me know if you think I've missed any bleedingly obvious players. I had a look around, and I don't think I've missed too many obvious ones, but there could be a couple of rookies or a couple of mid-prices that I've completely blown over the top of that you do need to let me know about. So do let me know in the comments below if I make any of those mistakes. Anyway, that's my first preseason video. I'll definitely do a couple more as we sort of ramp into the preseason and as preseason rolls along. I'm really, really looking forward to getting back into making videos. So thank you for coming along this ride with me. Make sure you do like this video, subscribe so you don't miss any of the other coming Supercoach Diaries videos on this channel. Thank you for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you later.